A Nightmare Best Forgotten. Shylow, a Shadow Short Story. Written and performed by C. Alice Moore. Chapter 1. Once upon a time, every fairy tale starts out that way, right? Even a New Age anomaly such as this. Or, shall I say, once upon a zero time. You know how the very nature of time loops then recycles over and over? Or, on another level, how tripped out time doesn't even exist at all. So yes, let's start over. Once upon a zero time on a quantum Earth such as our own. The constellation Leo rises and roars in the eastern horizon across the ecliptic plane of intercosmic space. Mother Nature's spirit, Gaia, Earth-gazing down from the cusp of the troposphere, the lowest layer of atmosphere connecting her to her earthly realm, overlays her physical world of land and sea. She is a translucent, immense, immersive entity, a mix of all human races, those known, unknown, long forgone, and forgotten. Hair of weeping willows, florals, and tendrils, which grow in a copious cornucopia of multicolors and textures. She brushes to the side one of her European feather grass sprigs, all blended with rogue fuchsia amaranthus twisties that fall over her ear, revealing her ever-changing iridescent skin. With her fluxing skin shades patterned animal markings sometimes strobe through. The whites of her eyes are evergreen, her irises dappled with multicolored pigments. Best of all, they are saturated with variegated, crystallized, marbleized, dancing, prancing, holographic rainbows. If one looks closely into each of her many glimmering, floating pupils, micro-shimmers of multiverses can be seen trapped drifting within, altering from piercing shallows to inky depths, which draw you in. She jostles away a newly discovered mystery plant from her eye to look over her earthly physical planet bod as if she were a spectator before the most spectacular planetarium. A wise breeze brushes by a transient and omniscient Mother Gaia. All the while she sings through the zephyr a snippet of a song. When the zero hits, it all begins. I'll tell you a secret, daydreamer, reader, dreamer. I, Mother Earth Gaia, was speaking in third person, for I am your narrator. And boy, do I have a shadow short story for you. Because right at this very egregious moment, a boy tosses and turns. So sit tight, or possibly sit fright. Be prepared to be scared as we enter the quantum realm of sentient shadows. This Earth was darkly encroached upon, somewhere in this quantum timeline, between the time of the first sprouted plant, ancients sitting around a campfire, and modern-day people still enjoying themselves around the same but different campfire. Yes, a breach of shady shadows from the nightmare world enjoy their creepish shadow leap, presently invading and hiding in the shadows cast by light, camouflaging within the shadows of the moonlit night. In this quantum world, these nightmare shadows go to and fro at will. The fro is where a little boy slumbers. The to leads back, originating from their nightmare home. This is where the nightmare portion of our shadow story begins. As I was saying, in the dead of night, a random kid named Randall, who could represent any rando kid, tosses and turns. Jolting up swiftly, the boy witnesses the most inhospitable, forbidding shapes take shape, slinking across his newly polished bamboo bedroom floor. Well, he thinks it's his bedroom floor in his room, which belongs to his parents, which belongs in his home, which in turn belongs in his real-life, real world. In all actuality, he does not perceive that the jolt he felt a moment ago has slipped him not out of bed, but right dab in a teeny thing called a nightmare. At first, the boy cannot put his finger on this, but then the illusion of the shiny floor bouncing upwards gives rise to the shadowy creature's slithery forms to take on more familiar configurations. Now, some kids have imaginary friends, but these shadows take on the shapes, essence, and features of his real-life pretend friends. Yes, the apparitions of his frenemy schoolmates materialize. In his day-to-day life, this rando kid is the son of a very prominent, not-so-random family. With his butlers, live-in chef, and nanny at foot, he is the opposite of a latchkey child, which is what his schoolmates are. Born with the proverbial silver spoon in his mouth, he is the quintessential privileged trust fund child. Hold the fun and trust in trust fund, for at this moment he is in the presence of untrustworthy creatures and is not having fun at all. What wells up in the kid's gut has the most foreboding feeling about it. If looks could kill, ask yourself, why couldn't words take a punch? The emphasized words below, with their question mark and exclamation point punctuation endings, punch the nightmaring kid in the gut, over and over, as if he were indeed a punctuation punching bag. Shadow 1 takes on the shape and essence of frenemy, stuck-up Stanley, who suffers from allergies and now takes the stage. He sniffles, then suggests,
"Nobody really likes you."
The imbecile Shadow 2 takes on the form and essence of frenemy Marjorie, who more than marginally agrees with stuffy Stanley. You know we all just use you for your status, right? The smack talk continues with adamant Adam, who ardently adds on,
"If it wasn't for your family, you'd be a nobody. You may have wealth, but your worth is worthless."
Toffee-Nosed Tosh follows the crowd, but can't really make up his mind. He cries out and waffles out in a sour, not sweet way.
"You're kind of a loser." I mean, you are. Yeah, you are. I mean, what do I mean?
Alec, smart-acidly, adds on, "Yeah." Really, smart Alec? Not much witticism there. Did you count it, daydreamer, reader, dreamer? I did. A 14-word beatdown. The kid is feeling pretty beat up by this point. With frenemies like that, who needs bullies? As I was saying, some lucky children are fortunate enough to have imagination to create make-believe friends. The kid has replaced his so-called ADHD, which his overpaid doctor claims he has, with only the hyper part. Overhyped up, hyper-focused to be exact. These lead to overstated statements of hyperbolic classics such as,
"I'm gonna die. It's the end of the world."
And
"This isn't happening."
that last one was not an over-exaggeration, being quite accurate. He also could have gotten away with, "This is an absolute nightmare," which continues. Objectively, anyone can empathize with the overreacting kid in this overstimulating, over-embellished, over-dramatized, nightmarish situation. Overwhelmed would be an understatement, leading one to ask, is he really overreacting? As if an overdone nightmare isn't already bad enough, the shadows begin to change form from frenemies back to their natural, shifty, shady shapes. The delirious nightmare itself shifts and takes on a more dire, dreaded, deleterious quality. A shadow story disclaimer for you, daydreamer, reader, dreamer. Shadows from the nightmares aren't how one would put it, the brightest of the bunch. But IQ doesn't get in the way of dark intentions. Nope. Now these shamster shams of shadows are barbarically, but at the same time, to an outside perspective, almost comically, barking orders at the boy, urging him to morph into objects they ludicrously dictate. With no will of his own, the boy, who sees no comedy, only tragedy in this sicko scenario, begrudgingly obeys each command. The hunched-over horror show of a shadow rings out.
Be a tool we can use.
The bemused boy is currently getting nailed, being hammered into his over-polished bamboo floors. The others find this new game a waggish amusement. A hoity-toity haughty shadow sings out,
Be a footstool.
Right as the footstooled boy morphs into his new form, an over-effusive oafish shadow interrupts the smug one.
No. Be a punchy, pudgy punching bag.
Biff, bang, pow, zonk, kablam! You know, all the classic comic book sounds. Classic for an ouch that hurts reason, right? The shadows have fun with this overworked trope. But the kid does not feel lightheartedly punchy. A hubris-focused, uppity shadow remarks.
Oh, I got one. Be a wrung-out towel.
A brutish shadow now playfully whips the others with the once boy-turned-damp wrung-out towel of a boy, as a jocose football jock might jocularly do in any random high school men's locker room. That's a different way to say throwing in the towel. I think you get the demeaning drift. The squealing shadow laughs and ups the ante in a cavalier way.
No, be spineless.
Without a spine, the pale shadow of a boy collapses. An over-elongated, egotistical shadow really thinks he's hit the mark with this next cackling, conceited command.
Be lily-livered.
A simple white lily flower grows from the overripe heaping pile of mush that was once the boy's liver, and the boy for that matter. A more patronizing, pompous shadow has an even more menacing look float across his facetious face. He takes it to a whole new, over-the-top, mutated level.
That's no fun. Be part of the living dead.
The nightmare transmogrifies into a zombie mare. In the center of a prototypical apocalyptic setting, a random post-riot empty Main Street, where a dastardly scene takes place. These shadow creature cretins are not featureless, faceless shadows of zombies per se. They definitely hit close to home, just as Randall's transmogrified, shadowed frenemies also hit close to home. Here's hoping that Randall's unconscious mind is simply recycling a quantum world feature film, Night of the Undead. And these shadow zombos won't literally hit his home. Especially seeing as these rando shadow zombos are the real deal, having guts and gore galore. Their features are similar to an old-timey black and white grave-clawing thriller. So, guts, gore, and glory in grayscale. Brief detour. Psychology shows, in a sick way, the correct shade and texture of pseudo-real, wet, viscous, gory gray used for gruesome gore in such films is far more fear-inducing than cherry cough syrup red number 40 spattered across the big screen. Now back to our feature, already in process. Each lofty, undead shadow is even more over-elaborate as the deadpan, flesh-eating overpopulation of zombie monstrosities they have just transformed into. The kid is now simply overpowered, being a part of their over-sensationalized undead brood. The big screen of life transmutes from big screen into bigger scream in the blink of a blood-filled eye. Grayscale turns to gravescale in view of the fact that there are no graves actually scaled. Despite this, if the kid still had his wits about him, he would never be gut-wrenchingly feeding on the brains of the grotesque deceased. Alas, he cares not a whit. He's not even scared witless, for there are no wits to be found.
Nosh, 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 nosh.
Ooh, that is grisly. Daydreamer reader Brainiac, brood on that for a monstrous moment. Moment's over. Suddenly, a silvery streak shoots out of the dead-end fog. As if it were a shooting star, it bolts rapidly past the unfortunate, trammeled, undead, overkilled, nightmaring kid, spring at such a sprightly pace that it almost gives off an illusion of light. In fact, it's a shame Randall Zombo possesses 0 wits, or else he might have wished upon it. No wish required. The silvery streak stops mid-air with just enough time to make out what, in fact, it is. In point of fact, it is also a shadow. The difference being the other shadows are spindly and spinely, like prickers of a pricker bush. This new shadow is pudgy and plump, like, well, a little boy. Out of umpteen shades of silver, the silvery streak is about 10th shades lighter than the others. The silvery streak overemphasizes his words as he speaks.
Be alive!
The rando Zombo boy turns from beast back into a little human undead boy. Undead because he's not dead. He's once more living. Unfortunately, the ill-fated Zombo Shadow Pack knows this. Only one problem remains: escape the horde hobbling right for them. Past the point of panic, to Randall, this horde might as well be the size of a high-rise, crossbred combo of every nightmare mashup monster that was ever nightmared. Randall flails his extended arm, lashing it back and forth, while his other arm's elbow crook simultaneously shields his eyes. Randomly, he frantically pulls a hold, or was it grabs apart? Who can really say which phrase is correct in this frenzied, overwrought mess? He plucks apart one of the melty, droopy, taffy-like faces of the rando shadow Zombo. That Zombo's sunken face droopingly overhangs its jutting, extended, splintered cheekbones. Randall rips and ruptures the fleshy, doughy shadow chunks. Hybrid flesh and shadow spatter, staining the very core of this zombie mare. And just like decomposing flesh, the lacerated portions of the Zom Shadow's decaying onion-peeled skin smear and scatter. These portions then disintegrate and evaporate into a poof of slate-gray shadowy vapor. Slate gray, as in tombstone gray, which is looking like what this kid is heading for. Hopefully all those rips don't turn into RIP. So, yes, the stained nightmare mentioned a moment ago is only meant to be taken figuratively. Unless, of course, you count the tinged essence of Randall's not-so-random soul. The silvery streak does another overpass flyby.
I'm frightened,
Randy emits with newly regained wits. The overzealous silvery streak acknowledges the kid.
No worries. I move so fast because I'm frightened too.
The silvery streak over-exuberantly blurts out a welcoming command to the boy. If the boy could understand such a command.
Be unfettered!
The kid looks and feels quite confused. The entire Zombo horde stops undead in their tracks. Undead here refers to the more traditional sense of the word, that of brains. A slinky Zombo Shadow is also quite a bit baffled by what he thinks is a new feathery development. Not understanding, it's a misunderstanding. He speaks up in a perplexed, gruesome Zombo tone.
Wait. The kid doesn't have feathers. How can the kid be unfeathered?
The other Zombo Shadows agree, with vigor and even more bewilderment.
Yeah, that's true.
Hey, Shadow Zombos, the word was unfettered, meaning what the silvery streak speaks next, and thinking almost as quickly as he does one last over and under flyby.
Be unbound. Be forgetful. Be over it.
The far from unflappable boy awakens from his overrated nightmare. Even though the nightmare was unfathomable, all that reminds the once fear-ridden boy that he even had a nightmare is a few beads of perspiration trickling down his forehead. Randall wipes his brow whilst the sweat lands on his parents' now even shinier, newly polished bamboo floor. It's a shame shamefaced Randall couldn't be as brave as the constellation Leo. Although those star clusters don't have the lion's share of intergalactic space, they still have their fair share. And in their own right, these stars are stargazers. For not only do they peer out from the ecliptic at other stars, but they also have the advantage to I spy with their interstellar eye down upon a ruffled-up, groggy Randall. Leo's fearless, fearsome roar echoes throughout the cosmos. The overstayed, overplayed nightmare and its over and above overuse of the word over is, well, overtly over for the kid. However, nightmares never end for the outlandish creatures from nightmares. Daydreamer, reader, dreamer. Are you curious enough to delve even further into this shadow story? Well, just like the overpolished bamboo floors are slippery when wet, or in the above case, slippery when sweat, let us slip and slide from the quantum real world into the world of nightmare shadows. These shadows are, in all actuality, shadow melunkanites, named after the night, their shadow king Malachite, and here's a shot in the dark. Melunkanites are possibly named for the lunkheads they are. Your guess is as good as mine. While being all of the above, Melunkanites are also minions. They have to sheepishly explain themselves to the top honcho Malachite, who is a more realized nightmare version than the others. He boasts an even laden, deeper leaden gray shade, being beefier and exceedingly more malicious than his minions. He always wears a hint of a grimacing smirk across his miserable, malevolent, meaner face. This superbly reflects his demeanor. King Malachite, Mal for short, and his horned lark begrudgingly gaze out over his nightmarish domain through a 30-foot single-pane window, which is wrapped with turrets on a sky-scraping fortress. The Shadow King's pet bird, or at least what seems to be a horned lark when its head is turned, lurches as it perches comfortably atop Mal's shadowy shoulders. Ooh, parrots on pirates' shoulders had it right all along. That does look comfy. The odd pair keep glancing off the terrifying watchtower, with its twisting spires leading up to a belfry complete with cliches, bat guano crazy, and vampire bats in the belfry. Dracula himself also canoodles somewhere out there in nightmares. Keep in mind this ground rule, daydreamer, reader, dreamer. If one can dream it up, one can nightmare it up. Now, if one listens closely, one may hear the "ox" from the pet parrot of the pirates and the "ars" of the actual pet parrot's pirate. These sounds and more are all embedded deeply within the nightmare empire, which Malachite and his perching pet continually peer out upon. An ashamed shadow minion with a luggy lump in his throat gulps, then says,
Malachite, my king, we have hit a slight snag.
Malachite is miffed. A slight snag or a slightly significant snag? The shaken-up shadow minion gulps louder.
Malage, it's the silvery streak of Shylow, sir. He's shadow-blocking our nightmarings again.
Mal and his seemingly horned lark don't even bother to turn around. They continue their gleaming grimace over the 1,000-foot sky-falling drop. They both just blurt out a rather dissatisfactory sound. Banished from the realm of conscious serpentine-like shadows, Shylow, a misfit shadow himself, was taken pity upon and gifted to a very special newborn girl. Stargazing from a massive scale perspective upon the cusp of the exosphere, the highest layer of atmosphere connecting her to the edge of interplanetary space. An eccentric and satisfied Mother Gaia whimsically traces the rising zodiac Aquarius in the eastern horizon as it floats across the ecliptic plane. The liquidy drifting of seasons shifting, formed by Earth's obliquity tilting, always in flux, never rests, breathing, bequeathing through a macrocosm's behest. Simply put, the seasonal shifting of obliquity never sleeps. Awakening from the most miraculous dream, Qiairah looks up to see her shadow. Newborns have the ability to cast a shadow and look upon it in a more direct way. The sound of machines, along with other more subtle sounds, cause the newly born babe to stir and see radiant colored orbs all around her shadow. Shylow winks at Qiairah. Key baby girl giggles at Shy. She then offers a tiny hand wave motion. Yes, newborns have the ability to cast a shadow and look upon it. Only rarely does the shadow look back. The end for now. The adventure continues in the arrival of the full-length novel and audiobook. Credits include Subtractive Edit by Elizabeth Harrigan. Sound engineered by Gary Werekamp. New Horizons Music Studio.